We are ready to get started. Sorry for the delay. Welcome to K-12 Education Budget. Before we consider recommendations for the School of the Blind and the School of the Deaf, I'd like to invite Gabrielle to go over the subcommittee report procedure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everyone should have a gold piece of paper in their folders today. The most important piece of information is that tonight, since we do have a report out tomorrow, I'll go back to my office as soon as we're finished tonight and type up the subcommittee report and email it to you. And I ask that you have any edits to me by midnight tonight, so we have time to print that and get it ready for tomorrow. The absence of a reply is understood as consent to move forward in the process. So we are not doing the traditional signature pages similar to how we did it last session. This does not replace the minority report, so if members would like to create one of those, please reach out to me. I will take any questions, but that should be the main highlights.
Committee, are there any questions about the recommendations and how that procedure works? Okay. All right, so committee, what we'll do is we'll open the floor to recommendations. I have passed out some recommendations that have been put forward by myself and my vice chair. And I will begin with the recommendations for the deaf and then open up for any additional recommendations. You should know that these recommendations, if approved by our committee today, will be shared with the Appropriations Committee tomorrow. That is the plan. So let's start with the School of the Deaf. I'd also like to remind everyone that we do have Luann Barron. She is on WebEx, I believe. So if there are questions that we need to direct to Luann, we can do so. All right, so committee, if you have your budget from Research Out, if you want to reference it, let's take a look at the items that are on the recommendation. The first one is the House Committee on K-12 Education Budget requests that the Spark Health and Education Advisory Panel recommend $386,000 in COVID-19 ARPA funds be appropriated for children ages birth to 2. So in your research packet, it says birth to 3, but it's age 3. We learned that yesterday, as soon as they turn 3 on their 3rd birthday. Oh, it's right there. Language Assessment Program, LAP, for the School of the Deaf for fiscal year 2023. The next item, add language requiring the Kansas School for the Deaf to implement a fee-for-service model to fund the full implementation of the LAP for ages 3 to 8 through fees billed to school districts, up to $493,157 for fiscal year 2023. Item number 3, add language that the Language Assessment Fee Fund shall be established as a no-limit fund for the purpose of assessing a fee for service for the LAP to Kansas School for the Deaf, and the following proviso language shall be added. I'm not going to read the proviso language. It was included in Luann's testimony yesterday. And finally, number 4, the committee directs KDHE to identify matching dollars to leverage necessary state general fund with federal dollars for the LAP in future fiscal years. So that would be our first set of recommendations. It's not a motion yet. I do want to take any discussion on these items and any additional recommendations. Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could we please get a refresher? I'm pretty familiar with the ESSER funds and the maintenance of effort and the requirements there, but this is, since these schools didn't get the same support, they're going through the ARPA funds, and I'm just wondering what type of, if there were any restrictions on how those funds are used and how they could be used to supplement budget items like this. Could we get a refresher on that, please?
Well, I'm going to give you, just from my perspective as a member of this subcommittee of Education and Health, there is the chair, Senator Renee Erickson, and then I am the other legislator on that committee. We have had introductory meetings. There is not a declared amount that we can or cannot approve yet in that committee, but they have provided us a little bit of core information that was not voted on by these committees that says, let's focus on mental health for the health portion, let's focus on early development for the education. It is certainly up to the committee to make that determination. So I don't have the total amount that might be available. And Gabrielle, do we know I know I asked about individual committee amounts. Do we know the total amount that's still unused for Spark funding?
I don't have that information with me right now, but we could get that information.
That would be great. Yes, Representative Hoyt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I guess this amount to me seems reasonable. I'm not as much concerned about how much in this case as I am about what it can be used for, and just want to make sure that, because we had some of those recommendations last year that did not get approved through that committee based on what it can be used for. So, this is one-time programming fees that I imagine, as we heard through COVID, it's more difficult to do these assessments, but they were able to maybe save some dollars over Zoom, things like that. But if we're going to move on and maybe do some capital, I think it'd be really helpful to get a refresher on what those parameters are for available uses for that funding.
So I'm going to answer, okay, the capital will be for the next section. Representative Hoffman will share that information. So that will be for the School of the Blind. In terms of what it can be used for, what we have been told is it is pretty broad and open. In terms of last year, ours actually did qualify. It was just that we were specifying, and the state board said, that's our domain to make that determination. Mental health would have qualified. Community and schools would have qualified. The safety in the buildings, that would have qualified as long as we weren't making it, match for match. So it wasn't about whether they qualified, even though that was the initial feedback we received. It was that they said that they were the decision-making body, not us. In terms of this, the legislature, through this subcommittee, through the State Finance Council that will approve it, is the determiner. And so from what I understand is it's very, very, very broad. Yes, Gabrielle.
Thank you for the promotion.
Are you sure it is?
There's approximately $731 million in remaining ARPA funds.
But to Representative Hoy, I'm just going to follow up on this because I did ask our preparations chair to provide the information about what those core areas that we are asked to look at first in those subcommittees. So it is a really good question, but the response was, well, pretty open. So if we find anything to the contrary, we will definitely relay that. And Gabrielle can, ensure that that's correct. Any other recommendations or questions about these recommendations? Representative Byers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On point number 4, I'm just assuming, but just for clarification, we're talking about the LAP program for birth through 3 years old on that one, right? So this is not specified, just making sure we're not open-ending.
You are correct. And Gabrielle, do we need to specify?
We certainly can.
Okay, and just so the committee knows that we are trying to find out if Medicaid monies could be used for some of this. So if a child qualified for Medicaid, perhaps there would be some kind of Medicaid match. We don't have that answer at this point. But through KDHE, they would be able to identify it for future years. Representative Nguyen.
And thank you, Madam Chair. So number 2, help me understand, is this 493,157 in the proposed budget that you're trying to replace? What page are you looking at?
It is in the proposed budget, and so we have. Oh, well, no, it's not in the governor's budget. It is not in the governor's budget. It was the request. It was the request of the agency. And this is similar to what happened last year. It was not recommended by the governor. And so we asked KSDE to find monies available, and they worked with KDHE and found monies, one-time monies available for it. It was not included in the governor's budget again, and from what I understand, it was because there were likely dollars in some area, in some pot that we could utilize to pay for it.
So does this mean then you are shifting, or I don't know if it's a shift, but bill to the school districts? So,
Yes, the school districts that have these students, that are serving these students, they would be receiving base state aid as well as special education dollars for these students. And so one of the things that was identified by a group that got together, KSDE, KDHE, Children's Cabinet, and perhaps, I believe, Luann as well, and she can comment on that. They came up with a fee for service as a solution for a portion of the children.
was that in this report?
That was what was shared with yesterday.
Verbally, okay.
And actually, it was partially included in Luann's testimony, the updated testimony. So there may have been several different versions of her testimony, I'm not sure, but the latest version did include the recommendation that it be fee for service, because then it is applied one child to one child.
Okay.
If there are no other questions or recommendations for the School for the Deaf, I would entertain a motion. A motion has been made by Representative Estes and seconded by Representative Penn. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Okay, the recommendations for the School for the Deaf are passed out unanimously. And thank you, Luann, for being here today. Would you like to say anything to the committee?
Yes, I would. So I would like to thank all of you for your ongoing support. And we know you have supported the LAP program from day one. So we appreciate the continued funding for the program and finding a way to make that happen. So again, thank you again for all of your support.
Thank you, Luann. Thank you for everything you do as well. We're excited to see this program fully developed and fully implemented. Committee will move on to the Kansas State School for the Blind. And let's see, is John here today? Oh, he is back here. All right, John Harding, the superintendent, is with us. So if there are questions that we need to go directly to John, committee, please feel free to request that, and we will go in that direction. So Representative Hoffman.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So one of the things that we have kind of charged the different committees, different budget committees with the chairman and myself was to look at anything of capital improvements that we could, if it was one-time spend, that we could possibly use that for Spark money. So this recommendation would call upon the School of the Blind to request from the appropriate Spark advisory panel the amount of $919,504 and the $1.3 million for their some of their capital improvements. Now, if they do not get that funding, then it will lapse back, and SGF would then take it over. Or no, I'm sorry, the SIBF, yeah, the State Building Fund would take it over. So we will I mean, it will be in the budget. It's just, let's see if we can get the money through the Spark funding first, and then we'll go on. Because this does fit in with what we're trying to do, is to use that Spark money for one-time spends. So that would be my recommendation, that part of it anyway.
And Gabrielle, so the committee, you can turn to page 19 of the report. And Gabrielle, will you walk through us the recommendation and exactly what makes up the 919,504 and the 1.3 for the committee?
Certainly. So this will start on page 19 of the State School for the Blind budget analysis. The fiscal year 22 capital improvements include campus boilers and HVAC upgrades. That portion was the agency's request, was $250,818 SIBF. The planned work includes replacement of HVAC systems in the Brighton building and infrastructure repairs for old boiler systems. This is on page 20 for your reference. The request also includes rehab and repair costs. That portion is $530,930 SIBF. That includes general repairs of campus facilities and repair of the perimeter fencing. Also in the agency request is safety and security. That portion is $137,756, all SIBF. That's the same as the fiscal year 22 approved amount as well. Planned work includes ongoing maintenance and upgrade to the life and safety systems. The fiscal year 23 request is also on page 20. That also includes campus boilers and HVAC upgrades in the amount of $300,234. Again, that's replacing HVAC system components, and that one is in the Irwin building. It also includes rehab and repair in the amount of $806,816 SIBF. That one did have the error in the budget submission where the $265,000 was included twice, so the governor's recommendation took that out. Rehab and repair includes general repairs to facilities, replacement of a freezer, refrigeration equipment, and electrical service upgrades. It also includes safety and security in the amount of $144,545 SIBF. Planned work includes ongoing maintenance and upgrades for the life and safety systems. And finally, the student use elevator is in the amount of $283,235 SIBF, and that would be for elevator upgrades in the Brighton building.
All right, thank you for that review of how those monies would be used. Questions for Representative Hoffman? Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So here again, I think that I just want to clarify that these funds, do they have a maintenance of effort like the ESSER funds? No. Okay.
The last word I had on that, as Gabrielle just looks at it, is pretty much what I had mentioned early. They don't have the strings that the ESSER funds do. But here's the good news, Representative Hoy, is that if by any reason these do not qualify, or the Spark Committee or the State Finance Council says no, then it just goes right back to SIBF.
It'll stay right in there. Okay, yeah, because
it's
I mean, the
automatic.
HVAC, that makes sense.
But
Maybe the
not all
only
of
one
it. Right.
yeah, so,
So what the ask is big, and then if we get something out of it, that's great. That's a savings for our SIBF fund, money that can be used in the future for other types of repairs. Well, Gabrielle's looking at that. Go ahead, Representative Hoff.
Yeah, Madam Chair, and, you know, we may not end up getting all of it under the Spark, but whatever we do get, you know, would offset, and then SIBF would cover the rest of it, so.
ARPA funds, my understanding is they do fall under the maintenance of effort, as well as the maintenance of equity requirements.
What would that look like, for example, on capital improvements?
I would have to get some more information on that.
Okay. And the committee is so new, Representative Hoy, that I cannot answer that myself even. Yes, go ahead,
Well,
Representative.
one thought would be, and maybe we just want to go in and ask and find out. I don't know that I'm completely opposed to that, but we could, like, the HVAC rehab repair, that all makes sense to me for the COVID. Maybe we just take the safety and, the 144,545 for safety and security out and leave that in the general fund and reduce that request a little bit. That could be one option, but I don't know that I'm necessarily opposed if that's kind of the process that the subcommittees are going to go through, is to put those out there, but that could try to help with the maintenance of effort issue.
Gabrielle's going to give us a little more information on capital improvement projects with maintenance of effort.
So capital improvement projects generally do not count towards our maintenance of effort or maintenance of equity. That doesn't mean that they're not allowable, they just would not count towards that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That resolves my concern.
Okay, we can take these recommendations and turn those into a motion if you'd like, Representative Hoffman, and then we will take other recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that for fiscal year 2022, the agency requests $919,504 from the Spark Advisory Panel for capital improvements, and then for fiscal year 2023, that the agency requests $1.3 million from the Spark Advisory Panel. And just exactly what this says, and if whatever is not covered by the Spark Advisory Panel would then refer back to the SIBF fund.
Is there a second? Second by Thomas. And further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to go, I'm not going to make a motion to take it out, but I just want the committee to be, I guess, to understand that in both of these, the governor put in a continuation of the nurse-based pay increase that was being paid for by the Spark Task Force, and it would now be paid for in SGF. You know, today in appropriations, we actually took out a pay increase from another agency pending looking at global pay increases. So don't be too surprised if there's not a motion made by someone in appropriations to pull those out when we go through appropriations tomorrow. Might not happen, but it might. So I'm not going to make the motion, but so it'll stay in, I guess, for right now, but just heads up.
And I would just add to that, there is constant discussion from one agency to another agency, from one representative to another representative of how to handle pay increases. And should it be based on the time that they are there in that agency, the merits, what other factors might, or is it just an automatic 5% for everyone? So thank you for bringing that up. Any other recommendations or questions? Superintendent Harding doesn't want to leave without addressing us, I'm sure. Okay. Superintendent Harding, why don't you come on up? And I was just going to ask you a final question here. Make sure we've dotted our I's, crossed our T's. Is there anything else that this committee should know relating to your budget, relating to salaries and filling positions?
No, I just wanted to thank the committee, and I appreciate the creativity, and we're certainly willing to apply for other funding to cover those capital expenses. So, if I understand correctly, if it doesn't happen, then it goes back to SIBF. So I appreciate the thinking and know that we're willing to do that. So thank you.
Thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, committee, if there are no further questions relating to this Kansas School for the Blind, then we'll go ahead and, since we don't have another recommendation, I think we've completed our recommendations. No other items on these two budgets? Okay, we have one other small item on the request of Representative Nguyen, and that is a review of the Kansas Tax Credit Scholarship Program. Once we wrap that up, it'll only take a few minutes. Once we wrap it up, then I'll kind of give another quick overview of what we have to look forward to tomorrow and next week. Representative Nguyen, you can go ahead and take the mic.
Thank you. Before you start, please. So the recommendation for both of these budgets is just this.
So the recommendation would include the governor's budget plus these additional recommendations. So we are not changing what she has recommended except for these items.
Okay, I just didn't hear that in the motion.
Yeah, it wasn't in there. I don't know if I needed to say it, but are we good with that, Gabrielle? Nick,
Can certainly
that-
state it if you would like, but
As long as it's clear.
is it clear or do we need to?
For me, as long as, for us, as long as it's
I'm looking
clear
at
on
our
the record.
revisor. What do you
looking at
think?
Nick.
Excuse me?
Yes, I'm.
You're clear?
good as long as.
Okay. All right. So just for clarification. we will
Governor's
not-
recommendation
Right.
for fiscal year 22 and
And
23
23.
with the adjustments
Yes,
discussed.
that's perfect. Okay. Thank you, Gabrielle.
And good afternoon, committee. I've been asked to keep this presentation to 5 minutes, so I am happy to take that challenge on. You should have a printout of the PowerPoint in your folder. I won't hit every slide, but it is information you've reviewed in the past, and you do have it for your reference. A couple things I want to point out is 2021 HB 2134 did make some changes to the program. It expanded the program by amending student eligibility requirements, school eligibility requirements, and then the reporting requirements. It amended eligible students to include students who are eligible for reduced price added to free meals under the National School Lunch Program, so free and reduced lunch students. Some other points. The slide number 4, under qualified schools. Non-public schools that desire participation in the program are eligible for participation. The school must meet the 3 requirements stated there. They must notify the state board, be accredited by the state board or a national or regional accrediting agency recognized by the state board, and comply with requirements of the program. Moving to slide 7. Slides 7 through 9 include some information pulled from the legislative report that the Kansas Department of Education puts together every year. This is a quick snapshot of where the program is at. Currently, in the past school year, 1,614 students were eligible in 54 different districts. The most common districts are listed on that slide as well. The following one gives a quick overview as well of the scholarship organizations. There are currently 9 registered scholarship granting organizations. Most of those are being granted through Catholic Education Foundation, Support for Catholic Schools, and Christian Faith Center. Slide number 9 has some overview information for the most recent school year, for fiscal year 2021 through the 22 school year, sorry, not fiscal year. There were 167 students that were awarded scholarships, and those totaled about $3.6 million. Since the beginning of the program, 3,280 student scholarships have been awarded, totaling $12.5 million. In the 2021 tax year, there were $7.5 million in contributions and $5.3 million in tax credits reported. And since the beginning of the program, there have been $22.9 million in total contributions received and $16 million in tax credits. The final slide goes over 2 other states that have programs similar to Kansas. There are 16 other states total that have tax credit scholarship programs. And I will save a little bit of time for questions.
All right, good job. All right, we have questions from Representative Hoy and then Representative Byers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is on slide 9. So we see that there are $3.6 million awarded scholarships, but there was $5.3 million in tax credits reported. That's because they get the 70%, not the full amount, but why is that 3.6 million not, is it possible that they're putting it into these organizations, the SGOs, and then those are not being awarded and it's just sitting in those funds?
So I don't think I would speak to if those funds are going into districts and they're not being awarded. I will say that not all scholarships have been finalized for the 21 to 22 school year, since we're still in that school year. So we can get some more information on what that might look like at the end of the year, but
That makes sense, thank you. And then I just want to point out, or I guess ask, because, you know, I've appreciated all the discussions and focusing on achievement and wanting our students to have the best education, but there's no information in here on if how the students are achieving or benchmarks, and so I continue to appreciate having these updates, but there is no way for us, I don't believe, to compare whether or not, once the students get this taxpayer dollars, if it actually helped to improve achievement.
Representative Hoy, you sound like me when I talk about accreditation, because that's, with the new rules and regs for accreditation, there's 286 ways to measure all the different districts. So I too was concerned that we can't really compare. But what you can do to compare is it's a little bit time consuming, but you can go to KSDE's website and go to the accountability reports. And I am going to bet here that the majority of these schools, at least all of them that are state board accredited, are included. And so you could actually pull up a school and you could find out how they're doing overall. You could pull out subgroups and just look at the outcomes that way. It is tedious, but that would be your best bet.
Yes, and you can get on there for those that are state accredited and look up those benchmarks, but these also are offered to national and regionally accredited organizations.
Absolutely. And as we always say, that the parents are the determinant of whether or not they're doing a good job, and they will pull their kids from a school where that kid is not succeeding. It's a little bit different accountability than a public school, but your point is noted, and it might be interesting, Gabrielle, if you took a look at, and maybe look and see how many of our participating private schools are reporting their scores. And then you could also include, what does that equate to in the number of students? And that might help Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Representative Byers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gabrielle, on slide number 6, and I have two questions here, but on slide number 6, you've got scholarships may be made payable to both the parent and the non-public school. Is that an either or is it either the non-public school and the parent non-public school? Can you help me understand how that works there?
So it's my understanding that the scholarship would be tied to the student in one way or the other. So my understanding is that it would be payable. I'll have to double check though on that.
Okay, 'cause
Let me double check.
the thing I would be concerned with too, if it's being payable to the parent, we need to know some way that the parent's using it for educational expenses. The second question I've got is, on that same slide, you've got that the program requires that 90% of donations and scholarships be dispersed within 36 months of receiving. But then on slide 9, we're showing that in the life of the program, there's been almost $23 million in contributions, but there's only been scholarships awarded in the amount of $12.5 million. So are we actually hitting the 90% of donations, or how does that work out?
I can follow up on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And the only thing I would respond back on the slide 6, the check is payable, or the money is payable to both. So the way that I understand it, Nick, and you can remind me, is that both names are on that. So the school can't cash it in without the parent, parent can't cash it in without the school. Is that right? We did change it? Okay. Okay, well, we will double check, and we'll have another look at it. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Slide 7 says there's 1,600 eligible. Slide 9 says 1,000, you said 100, but we knew 1,067 have been awarded. And you said they probably haven't completed those awards. How many then students are enrolled?
I can, at all of the eligible schools,
Yeah.
I would have to follow up on the total enrollment, but I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Nick, we'll let you follow up on the questions that were just asked.
So with regard to the payment provision and how a SGO has to distribute payment, KSA 724354 provides that the SGO has to direct payments of the scholarship to the qualified school for that specific student. And then the payment is made by check payable to both the parent and the qualified school, or to only the qualified school. So it's kind of an either or, where either the parent and the school are signing off on the check, or it's just directed to the school in the form of a scholarship.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Committee, if you have other questions related to the Kansas Tax Credit Scholarship and you would like to direct those to Gabrielle, she can look into that and share the information with Holly, and Holly can share it with our committee. So that concludes our informational briefing on the Kansas Tax Credit Scholarships. For tomorrow, a reminder that we are going to be talking about special education. We're not taking testimony on special education, but because we're going to be jumping into the budget in a few weeks for Kansas Department of Education, and because districts have asked lots of questions on this, and there have been requests and concerns, and I want you as the committee to understand how the special education dollars, how they are funded for each student. So that's the goal for tomorrow. What else do we have on our agenda tomorrow? Yes, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you please review the timeline for submission of bills, deadlines, and things of that nature as we're coming into
Yes,
this
I
season?
will. So tomorrow is going to be the deadline for individuals. So if you want to, if you want to do a bill with your name on it, Representative Penn, you would have to have it in by tomorrow. Is that right, Nick?
So the individual bill request deadline was Monday, the 31st, I believe.
So
So,
I thought, okay, to the revisers.
and then we are on the clock as revisers to get those individual bills with individuals' names on them up to the floor by tomorrow.
Okay.
So those have to be turned in by tomorrow for the individual requests.
Or committee bills. So Nick has had to correct me all week on this particular item. So on the committee bills, we had yesterday was the deadline for committee bills for non-exempt committees. So if you had a bill, you could potentially introduce it in an exempt committee, which is Fed and State, which is appropriations, and what's the other one? Tax. Okay. But if you do it without permission, let's say, it could just sit in there and not go to the committee that you had intended it to go to. Representative, did you have any other questions on that? Okay. So for us, so our timeline, if you haven't looked at the legislative session calendar, we have Monday through Thursday. We will be working Monday through Thursday of next week. We will be hearing bills Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That means we will be working bills on Thursday. And if we need additional time, we will work more bills on Monday. And I'm not even sure what bills, how, when. It could be any of the bills that we have heard. Remember, it would only be bills that we have heard. And we will hear at least 4 more bills before Thursday arrives. And then that's turnaround. So any other questions for the committee? So that'll give you some time. If you have amendments, you can work on that. All right, if there are no other announcements or questions, that's the plan. And thank you all for being here, and we are adjourned.